Do you remember a time when leaving the house didn't mean leaving a trail? No GPS. No text me when you get there. Just the quiet certainty that you'd be back before the streetlights flickered on. If you were born in the late 70s through the mid-80s, you grew up in a world that no longer exists, and became an adult in one that seemed to arrive overnight. You're not fully Gen X, molded by analog independence, yet not entirely millennial, raised in the architecture of the internet. You came of age in the seam between them. And living in that seam carries a subtle cost. Identity often forms from belonging to a place, a culture, a generation, but you were always slightly out of step. Too young for Gen X's cynicism, too analog for the seamless fluency of millennials. So you learned a quiet skill, how to move between worlds without fully inhabiting either. You remember rewinding tapes with a pencil. You also remember your first email address, a doorway into the future. Both memories belong to you equally. That dual awareness shapes how you perceive time, risk, and change. You didn't miss the future, and you didn't lose the past. You were born at the hinge of history, the moment when one world softly closed and another quietly began loading. Before algorithms predicted every desire, boredom was real. Empty afternoons stretched out with nothing scheduled, nothing glowing, nothing waiting to dissolve the silence. If you were a child, boredom wasn't failure, it was default. So you invented. Sticks became swords, sidewalks became racetracks, empty rooms became entire worlds. Without realizing it, you trained your brain to create experience from imagination alone. Psychologists today call this the brain's default mode network, when attention turns inward, recombines, and creates. For you, it was simply Tuesday. You learned patience, too. Waiting for photos to develop, for your favorite song to hit the radio, for friends to arrive at agreed times. Once you left home, you were unreachable. Waiting wasn't frustrating, it was normal. And in that waiting, something important formed, the muscle of delayed gratification, the tolerance for uncertainty, the understanding that not everything is on demand. Your social life was physical, immediate, and unscripted. Conflict happened face to face. Tone, posture, and silence carried meaning long before text stripped them away. You learned to repair after friction, not escape discomfort. Solitude was your companion, not loneliness, but the quiet of being alone with your thoughts. No notifications, no infinite scroll, no interruptions. Your mind had space to echo. That childhood, now nearly extinct, gave you something rare, the capacity to tolerate stillness, to imagine without input, to exist unentertained, unobserved. You are among the last adults whose inner life was formed in that analog silence. And just as you were becoming yourself, the world shifted. Not gradually, not across generations, but suddenly, right in the middle of adolescence. 1 year, connection meant a wall phone tethered to a cord. A few years later, it meant a glowing portal humming with the song of a 56K modem. You were old enough to remember the before, young enough to navigate the after. This created something psychologically rare, technological bilingualism. You mastered the language of analog presence, eye contact, pauses, shared silence, while also learning digital fluency, usernames, typed tone, curated selves, connection without proximity. For you, the internet was never the air you breathed, it was a place you went. You logged on, and crucially, you logged off. School, friends, family existed in one world. Chat rooms and early profiles existed in another. Crossing between them felt intentional, even experimental. You built your first online identity not as a mirror, but as a version of yourself, assembled, edited, tried on. The early internet was a laboratory, not a reflection, but adulthood dissolved that boundary. Work moved online, friendships moved online, memories moved online. Somewhere along the way, the log-off door disappeared. You carry the memory of when it existed, a time when connection had edges, when presence and absence were distinct states. Identity usually grows from belonging, a generation, a shared culture. But if you are a Xennial, that recognition was always slightly out of focus. You were labeled Gen X, yet didn't share its fully analog formation. Later, you were folded into Millennials, yet never felt native in their digital world. So you learned to translate rather than inhabit, to navigate generational spaces without fully settling. This creates a subtle psychological state, hybrid, not lost, between, not fragmented. You understand both sides, but recognition is not belonging. This duality has a strength, cognitive flexibility, empathy across differences, comfort with transition. But it also carries a cost, a softer anchor for identity, fewer cultural mirrors, less reassurance that your experience forms a coherent whole. So you built continuity internally, from memories that span incompatible eras, from a life that began analog and matured digital. You are not between generations by accident. You are what transition looks like when it becomes human. Your childhood unfolded in the long afterglow of the 1990s, a decade of stability. The Cold War ended, economies grew, technology promised progress. You believed it would hold because children believe that the world will. But adulthood shifted suddenly. The dot-com bubble burst, careers dissolved, stability became provisional. September 11th struck at the moment of launch. First jobs, first apartments, first independent plans. Then came the 2008 financial crisis, as many of you were approaching traditional milestones. These disruptions layered into a worldview often described as cynical optimism. You still hope for a better future, but with the steady awareness that systems fail, timing betrays, and change arrives unannounced. When you were a child, communication had edges. Phones were fixed, messages waited on machines, work stayed at work. Then adulthood arrived with total shift. Email followed you home, laptops traveled with you, smartphones dissolved the boundary between presence and demand. You remember a time when being unreachable was ordinary. If someone needed you, they waited. That memory now exists as a quiet tension. Part of your nervous system still expects pauses, offline stretches, spaces where attention rests. But the modern world rarely grants them. Parenting adds another layer. You see your children navigating a connected world from birth. Friendships extend through devices. Risks move faster. Mistakes persist. And yet, you want to preserve the freedom you had: unplugged play, boredom, private exploration. You improvise boundaries, negotiate screen time, encourage outdoor adventures. Beneath it lies a subtle grief, the recognition that childhood as you knew it cannot be fully recreated. At work, you inhabit the same in-between space. Older colleagues value hierarchy and structure. Younger colleagues embrace speed and fluidity. You translate, mediate, bridge gaps. Meetings stabilize when you reframe, projects align when you translate expectations. You operate quietly in this connective space, spanning operational logics without fully discarding either. Psychologists call it cognitive flexibility, but for you, it is environmental adaptation, forged by transition itself. Midlife compresses responsibilities. Aging parents demand attention. Children still grow in a complex, exposed world. Career stability arrived late, economic disruption delayed milestones. Role strain is constant: caregiver, parent, worker, partner, mediator, drawing from finite reserves of energy. Generational invisibility amplifies fatigue. Support flows through you more than toward you. Continuous load shapes a persistent tension, and yet, you carry something rare: lived memory of a human pace, of days unfolding without interruption, friendships deepening without documentation, thoughts forming slowly and privately. You remember being unreachable, and that ordinariness is now cultural memory, evidence that attention once had margins, imagination once had space, identity could form unobserved. You are among the last adults whose inner life began in analog quiet. After you, childhood starts already connected, already searchable, already seen. That is why your experience matters now more than ever. In a hyper-digital age, we need people who remember pause, offline space, and human contact unmediated by devices. If this reflection resonates, you are not invisible, you are continuity. Subscribe to explore the quiet psychology of human adaptation in a rapidly changing world. And share in the comments, what is one analog memory from your childhood that still shapes you today? Let's map the last unconnected childhood while it's still within living reach.